I never believed in near-death experiences until I was clinically dead for 7 minutes and discovered the spiritual truth that could end addiction forever. As a licensed addiction counselor with 15 years of experience, I know how that sounds. Trust me, I was the biggest skeptic when it came to near-death experiences and spiritual healing. I had struggled with my own demons for over a decade. Cocaine, alcohol, prescription drugs, you name it, I tried it. I'd been through rehab 3 times, countless AA meetings, therapy sessions, and every treatment program available. Nothing worked, nothing stuck. What I discovered in those 7 minutes didn't just cure my decade-long addiction, it revealed the actual cure that could end addiction forever. And it's not what any expert will tell you. I was at rock bottom when it happened, but what occurred next defied everything I thought I knew about addiction, healing, and human consciousness. I'd lost my job, my apartment, and my relationship. I was sleeping on a friend's couch, stealing money to buy drugs, and lying to everyone who still cared about me. That morning, I had scored what I thought was cocaine, but it was laced with fentanyl. I remember sitting alone in that dirty bathroom, feeling the needle pierce my skin for what I promised myself would be the last time. What I'm about to tell you might sound impossible, but I need you to understand that every detail is exactly as I experienced it. Let me tell you exactly what happened when I crossed over. And then everything went black. But to understand how this impossible cure works, I need to take you back to where this nightmare really began and show you exactly what happened when I crossed over. My addiction started innocently enough, like most do. I was working at a treatment center, helping people overcome the same struggles I thought I had conquered. The irony wasn't lost on me, even then. I'd been clean for 2 years after my first stint in rehab, but the stress of the job, the constant exposure to other people's pain, and my own unresolved trauma created the perfect storm. It started with a drink after particularly difficult sessions. Just 1 beer to take the edge off. Within 6 months, that beer became 3 beers. The 3 beers became a bottle of wine with dinner. The wine led to whiskey. And the whiskey led me back to the cocaine that had nearly destroyed my life years earlier. I told myself I was different now. I was older, wiser, more in control. But addiction doesn't care about your education, your experience, or your good intentions. It just cares about feeding itself. The morning of my overdose, I had just been fired from my job. My supervisor found out about my relapse when I showed up to work still high from the night before. The shame was unbearable. Here I was, supposed to be helping people get clean, and I couldn't even keep myself sober. I felt like a fraud, a failure, and completely hopeless. You know that voice in your head that says, "Just one more time"? That voice becomes your master. It whispers lies that feel like truth, and before you know it, you're living someone else's life. That's when I made the decision to use one more time, just to make the pain stop, just to find some peace. But here's what I didn't know yet. What I was about to discover would shatter everything I thought I knew about the nature of addiction itself. I remember injecting the drug and feeling it course through my veins. But something was different this time. Instead of the familiar rush of euphoria, I felt a crushing weight on my chest. My heart started racing, then slowing, then racing again. My vision blurred, and I could hear my heartbeat in my ears getting fainter and fainter. The last thing I remembered was thinking, this is it. This is how I die. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about life, death, and the nature of healing itself. In that moment between heartbeats, between breaths, between life and death, something extraordinary happened that science cannot explain. Suddenly, I wasn't in my body anymore. I was floating above the bathroom, looking down at myself slumped against the wall. My lips were blue, my skin was gray, and there was no movement in my chest. I watched as my friend found me, screaming my name and shaking my lifeless body. I tried to tell him I was right there, that I was okay, but no sound came out. I wasn't panicking though, I felt more peaceful than I had in years. That's when I noticed the tunnel. It wasn't like anything you see in movies. It wasn't a bright white light at the end of a dark passage. It was more like being inside liquid light itself, moving through dimensions I didn't know existed. The sensation was indescribable. Every cell of my being felt like it was vibrating with pure love and understanding. I could feel the presence of something magnificent drawing me forward. Stop for a moment. Can you even imagine what I'm describing? Because what happened next will change how you see consciousness forever. As I moved through this tunnel of light, I began to understand things that had never made sense before. I could see the interconnectedness of all things, like threads of light connecting every living being in the universe. But more than that, I could feel it. I felt connected to every person I had ever met, every animal I had encountered, every tree I had walked past. We were all part of the same infinite web of consciousness. How do I even begin to explain something that has no earthly comparison? Imagine trying to describe color to someone who has never seen. That's what this realm was like. Pure consciousness experiencing itself as infinite love. As I absorbed this overwhelming truth floating in that realm of pure consciousness, I was about to discover something that would shatter every assumption I had about addiction forever. What I discovered next about addiction will shock you to your core. It wasn't a disease, it wasn't a moral failing. It wasn't a chemical dependency or a genetic predisposition. Addiction was spiritual disconnection. Every person struggling with addiction was really struggling with the same thing. They had forgotten their connection to this infinite source of love and belonging that I was experiencing in that moment. As this profound understanding filled my consciousness, the tunnel began to open into something beyond anything I could have imagined. I emerged from the tunnel into what I can only describe as a realm of pure love. There was no ground beneath my feet, no sky above my head, just endless warm golden light that seemed to pulse with unconditional acceptance. And there, waiting for me, was a presence that I immediately recognized as divine. Not in any religious sense I had ever experienced, but as the source of all love, all wisdom, all healing. This presence didn't speak to me with words. Instead, knowledge and understanding flowed directly into my consciousness like water pouring into a vessel. I was shown my entire life from this expanded perspective, but not in the judgmental way I had always imagined a life review would be. Instead, I felt infinite compassion for every choice I had made, every mistake I had committed, every moment of suffering I had experienced. But the most profound part of this life review focused specifically on my addiction. I could see how every time I used drugs or alcohol, I was really trying to recreate this feeling of connection and oneness that was my natural birthright. Every high was a desperate attempt to touch this divine source that I had forgotten existed. Every craving was my soul crying out for its true home. Wait, I know this sounds impossible. I thought the same thing. But the presence wasn't done with me yet. And that's when it hit me like lightning, a truth so simple yet so profound, it shattered everything I thought I knew about addiction. Every needle I'd pushed into my veins, every pill I'd swallowed, every drink I'd taken. I wasn't trying to escape. I was trying to come home. The presence showed me that addiction wasn't about the substances at all. It was about spiritual starvation. Every person struggling with addiction had simply lost their connection to the infinite love and belonging that was always available to them. They were trying to fill a God-shaped hole with temporary, artificial substitutes that could never satisfy the deep longing of the soul. But experiencing this truth intellectually was just the beginning. What the Divine Presence showed me next would transform that understanding into a living reality within every cell of my being. But the experience wasn't over. The Presence began to show me deeper truths about the nature of healing and transformation. I was taken to what I can only describe as a healing chamber, a space that existed beyond time and dimension, where the very fabric of my being could be rewoven at the cellular level. In this space, I felt waves of pure love washing over me, through me, and around me. Imagine every cell in your body being gently washed by warm golden honey, dissolving years of pain cell by cell. It felt like being held by a mother's love, multiplied by every person who had ever truly cared about you. That's what was washing over me, not just healing my addiction, but healing the part of me that had forgotten I was worthy of love in the first place. It wasn't just emotional healing, it was physical, mental, and spiritual healing happening simultaneously. I could feel every cell in my body being cleansed, every toxic thought pattern being dissolved, every traumatic memory being transformed into wisdom and compassion. The Presence began to download information directly into my consciousness. But here's what will blow your mind. The cure wasn't complex medical procedures or years of therapy. It was 3 simple steps that felt like remembering a song my soul had always known. I was shown that there were 3 essential steps to completely healing addiction, and that these steps weren't just theories or philosophies. They were actual energetic processes that could rewire the brain, heal the body, and reconnect the soul to its source. These 3 steps weren't just theories, they were actual energetic processes that could rewire your brain in real time. The first step was recognition, not just intellectual acknowledgement of having an addiction, but deep spiritual recognition that the craving for substances was really a craving for divine connection. Every urge to use was actually the soul's attempt to return home to its source of infinite love and belonging. The second step was reconnection, establishing a direct, conscious relationship with the Divine Presence that exists within every human being. This wasn't about religion or belief systems, but about experiencing the tangible reality of being infinitely loved and supported by the universe itself. The third step was restructuring, allowing this divine connection to completely transform every aspect of life from the inside out. This meant letting go of old identities, old patterns, and old ways of being that were based on separation and fear, and embracing a new way of living based on connection and love. As this information flooded my consciousness, I could feel my entire being transforming. The part of me that had been addicted was literally being dissolved and replaced with something entirely new. I wasn't the same person who had overdosed in that bathroom. I was becoming something else, someone who remembered their true nature and their unbreakable connection to the source of all healing. The Presence then gave me a choice. I could stay in this realm of perfect love and connection, or I could return to my physical body with the mission of sharing what I had learned. The choice was completely mine, with no pressure or judgment either way. But as I considered my options, I felt a deep pull to return. Not because I was attached to my earthly life, but because I knew that millions of people were suffering from the same spiritual disconnection that had driven my addiction. As I prepared to return to my body, the Presence gave me one final gift. It showed me how to access this divine connection from within my physical form, how to maintain this awareness in the dense reality of everyday life, and how to help others find their way back to this source of infinite healing. The choice was made. With one final surge of divine love filling every particle of my being, I felt myself being drawn back across the veil, back to the dense reality of physical existence. The return to my body was jarring and painful. Waking up in that hospital bed was like trying to see color through thick gray fog after experiencing pure light. But here's what shocked the doctors. The constant craving that had screamed in my mind for a decade had gone completely silent. I came back to consciousness in a hospital room, surrounded by machines and medical equipment. My friend had called paramedics, and they had worked for 7 minutes to revive me. 7 minutes of clinical death that had completely transformed my understanding of existence and given me the key to healing addiction at its source. But here's what the doctors couldn't explain. What happened in my brain defied every scientific understanding of addiction recovery. The moment I opened my eyes, I knew something impossible had happened. The constant craving that had dominated my thoughts for over a decade was completely gone. Not suppressed, not managed, not controlled. Gone. It was as if the part of my brain that generated addictive behavior had been surgically removed, but without any loss of vitality or joy. If anything, I felt more alive than I had ever felt before. The doctors were amazed by my recovery, not just from the overdose, but from the addiction itself. Within days, it became clear that something fundamental had changed. I had no desire to use drugs or alcohol. I had no cravings, no withdrawal symptoms, no struggle with sobriety. I simply felt complete and connected in a way that made artificial substances seem completely unnecessary. The doctors were amazed by my transformation, but they couldn't understand the deeper truth I had discovered. The real miracle wasn't just that I survived. It was that I had been given the exact blueprint for healing addiction at its source. Now, after sharing this impossible journey with you, I want to give you the most precious gift I received in those 7 minutes. The exact 3-step process that doesn't just treat addiction, but cures it at its spiritual source. Pay close attention to what I'm about to share. This could save your life or someone you love. Let me share the 3 steps that didn't just save my life. They gave me a life worth living. The first step will challenge everything you think you know about addiction. The first step hit me like lightning in that divine space. I finally understood that every needle I'd pushed into my veins wasn't me trying to escape, but my soul crying out to come home. The first step is recognizing that addiction is spiritual starvation. Every craving, every urge, every compulsive behavior is really your soul crying out for connection to its source. When you feel the urge to use, instead of fighting it or judging it, recognize it as a sacred longing. Ask yourself, what is my soul really asking for right now? The answer is always the same: love, connection, belonging, peace, and wholeness. The second step became crystal clear as I floated in that healing chamber. I wasn't just experiencing God's love, I was remembering that this love lived within me always. The second step is reconnection through direct spiritual experience. This isn't about believing in God or joining a religion. This is about cultivating a direct, personal relationship with the infinite source of love that exists within you. Start with just 5 minutes of meditation each day, but instead of trying to empty your mind, fill it with the intention to connect with the divine presence within you. Ask to feel the love that is always available to you. Ask to remember who you really are. The third step happened automatically when I returned to my body. Everything in my life had to change because I was no longer the same person. The third step is restructuring your entire life around this connection. When you consistently choose divine connection over artificial substitutes, your brain literally rewires itself. New neural pathways form that are based on love and connection rather than fear and separation. Your body begins to crave spiritual connection the way it once craved substances. Your entire identity shifts from being someone who struggles with addiction to being someone who is connected to the infinite source of all healing. I know you're thinking this can't be that simple. That's exactly what everyone tells me until they try it. Now, let me prove this isn't just another recovery story. This isn't just theory for me. It's been over 4 years since my near-death experience, and I haven't had a single craving or urge to use substances since I came back to life. But more than that, I've helped hundreds of people apply these 3 steps in their own lives with remarkable results. People who had failed every traditional treatment program have found complete freedom from addiction by addressing its true spiritual root. This is the cure for addiction I promised you at the beginning, not a pill, not a program, but reconnection with your infinite spiritual source. In those 7 minutes of clinical death, I discovered the 3-step spiritual recovery process that has now freed hundreds from addiction. Recognition of spiritual starvation, reconnection with divine source, and restructuring your entire life around this connection. You now possess the same cure that transformed me from a broken addict to someone who remembers their true nature. The solution isn't more willpower or stronger medication. It's remembering that you are loved, you belong, and you are never alone. The cure for addiction isn't in a pill, a program, or a therapy session. It's in remembering who you really are and reconnecting with the infinite source of love that is your birthright. Every human being on this planet has the same capacity for this divine connection. The only difference between someone in active addiction and someone who is free is the degree to which they remember and access this truth. If you're struggling with addiction right now, or if someone you love is caught in its grip, I want you to know that there is hope beyond anything you've ever imagined. The solution isn't more willpower, better strategies, or stronger medication. The solution is reconnection with your true spiritual nature. The solution is remembering that you are loved, you belong, and you are never alone. What happened to me in those 7 minutes of clinical death wasn't just a near-death experience, it was a near-life experience. It was the moment I remembered what it truly means to be alive, connected, and free. And that same awakening is available to every single person watching this right now. You are not broken. You are not a failure. You are a spiritual being temporarily disconnected from your source, and reconnection is always possible. Right now, as you're watching this, your soul is calling you home. Can you feel it? I know you can, because that same divine connection I experienced is alive within you at this very moment. The question isn't whether healing is possible, it's whether you're ready to answer that call. If you're ready to begin your own journey of spiritual reconnection and break free from addiction forever, I've created something special for you. Below this video, you'll find my free 3-step spiritual recovery guide, the exact same process that transformed me and hundreds of others in those 7 minutes. This isn't another program or treatment, it's your direct pathway home to the infinite source of love that's been waiting for you. Click the link now, because every moment you wait is another moment, living disconnected from who you truly are. Your transformation starts the moment you decide you're worth saving. Subscribe for more life-changing spiritual insights and share this video with someone who needs hope today.